Good morning and welcome to today's Cleantech podcast with Cleantech stock news and interviews with thought leaders. Learn about today's problems and solutions for the future.
Today we are talking to Will Ralston, CEO of SinglePoint Inc. SinglePoint trades on the CBOE under the symbol SING. Today, Will and I speak about the solar industry, lessons learned from 2024, and what's next for SinglePoint. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. As a reminder to investors, this podcast may contain forward-looking statements. Please read all disclaimers and disclosures at the end of the show and at the bottom of the page for each podcast. The SinglePoint is a paid-for sponsor of the Cleantech podcast. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the show again. It's been a while since January, since you listed on the CBOE, I think was the last time we spoke to you. Can you just give us a little breakdown and recap of what's been happening for the first, half of the year with SinglePoint?
Appreciate you hosting us. As you mentioned, we were listed on CBOE, the first company to do so, which was very exciting for us. Big accomplishment. Getting listed on a tier one exchange. Things have gone well from a listing perspective. Being that first company, there's definitely, the arrows you take for, really being the first in any, right? You learn a lot of things throughout the process that you look back and you say, okay, well, next time, let's make sure we don't do those things or make sure this is implemented. And a few of those are not being plugged into all the ECN and all the platforms, right? That was tough. And now that that's there, that's been fixed, and you can now trade across all the platforms. But for those first few weeks were absolutely tough for us, the companies and the investors. And overall, that's part of when you're trailblazing, in essence. Being the first at something, those things have to get figured out. With that being said, you now see improved liquidity, you see improved credibility when we're talking these, and the opportunity to be on that tier one exchange, and in essence, the only truly global exchange, which we're excited about. And there's all the other exchanges out there, they're great as well. We've got NASDAQ out there, NYSE is out there, all tier one exchanges, and they're great homes for companies. And we look forward to continuing to doing what we're here on CBOE and continue to execute our business strategy, here in the near term and the long term. Because at the end of the day, we're looking at what the long term viability of single point solar, renewables, and the energy market as a whole. Right, this isn't a one stop solution of we're solely dedicated on solar specific. It's going to take a lot of different technologies to get there, and we're just one piece of that puzzle to ensure a secure energy future.
Can we talk about some of the lessons learned? I feel like the market has not been easy for any microcap company out there in the last couple of years. It's been very difficult. So I feel like anyone that's survived has done a good job. But let's just talk about where you're at now with the reverse split, and then some of the lessons you've learned along the way, like you said, as being a trailblazer with SinglePoint.
You brought up a good word there, survive, right? The markets for the last 2 years, even pre-listing, let's call it 3 years, have been extremely challenging, especially micro cap, small cap markets. We've seen, the entire market was held up last year by a magnificent 7, right? Everybody else had a pretty tumultuous year, and especially in the small cap and micro cap sector. Within that, we were one of 4 companies over the last, I believe it's 18 months, that have actually successfully completing an uplisting with a capital raise. 4. So it's a pretty impressive stat. Lesson learned, doing an uplist or an IPO in the last 2 weeks of December is extremely daunting and a big task, not just from it being of December and the various holidays and things that go into that time of year, but then you also run into everything that you did within that last 2 weeks is now a part of your annual audit. And so that's my segue into the transaction review, the number of transactions to review during that annual audit. If you push that into the new year, then it becomes a part of the following year's annual audit, not the 2023, right? So that puts an extra load and burden across, accounting teams, your audit partners and everything else. And within just not only the micro cap and small cap landscape and how tight the capital markets have been and difficult, various other aspects have been, we have the other pressing issue, which is the audit landscape and PCOAB. There's been a massive turn and change of what's been going on with basically the auditors of the auditors being the PCOAB, and it's all for the better. Overall, it means for better reporting for companies and for auditors and for investors to get a true picture. But what this cause and shift has happened is it's caused an additional 40% increase in late filers. And unfortunately, we were one of those. We now, got our K filed and our Q is here to be filed shortly. But it's really just the stringentness and the testing of the various transactions within companies. So, for example, we had 505 transactions last year, approximately, of which 489 were thoroughly audited from contract to receipt. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of not only stuff for the company to get through, but for the audit staff to get through and review. And then you add on top of that the fresh listing 2 weeks before the end of the year, and there's just a mountain load of paperwork to get through. So we've seen a lot of change in the industry. We do believe, again, that it is, will be for the better. But it's in the here currently, it's definitely been a large task for our team and for our partners to undertake. Now we have brought in additional accounting staff. We've brought in additional third-party partners. We're doing everything that we can to ensure that, one, we're never in this situation again, and two, to continue to improve the efficiencies of the business. We had 13 filings on time prior to this, last 3.5 years. Since we filed our original Form 10 to become fully reporting, we've never been late. And, so this is the first time for us, and we don't ever want to see that happen again.
You've done the reverse, the 10K, and like you just mentioned, you're working on the Q. Is there any other updates that you want to tell investors of other milestones achieved along the way?
Yeah, I think it's important, to explain, to talk about how important it is to remain listed, as I'm sure you're well aware of, and can reaffirm. Being on a listed exchange is ultimately the best place, for companies to be. It's hard to be recognized on other exchanges. It doesn't give the ability to talk with institutions or have certain awareness in the market when you're not on a tier 1 exchange. And so for us to structurally ensure that we remain listed, we believe is the proper thing for the company and for all 45,000 shareholders that we have out there. And so that's why we've taken these actions to ensure that listing. And through those actions, we actually rounded up every single shareholder that fell below 100 shares. We're rounded back up, which ultimately, I believe that was about 30, over 95%, I believe, of our shareholders were a part of that roundup. And, ultimately, I understand that doesn't necessarily take, everybody back to a certain position at one specific point in time, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. We thought it was the best thing for the company to do for the shareholders, and to continue, pushing that forward and ensuring that compliance with the exchange, current exchange and all other exchange listing standards.
I love that. I love that you did that for shareholders. I feel like you said that's the great step in, forward momentum, right?
You talked about survive and advance. It has been a year and 2 years of survive and advance. You look at the macro solar industry, right? The residential solar has been an absolutely difficult industry to be in the last year. We've seen, most recently, probably the most known one is SunPower. They've had their issues. They unfortunately had to close the doors recently. And that residential solar market, due to the increased interest rates, has been very difficult. I believe the number is, there was 10,000 of these small businesses out there ranging in the residential solar EPC market. Over 200 of them over the last year have had to, close the doors and move on to other things now. So that survive and advance is extremely important for us because it's done two things. One, we've been able to reduce overhead quite significantly, over $3 million, and improve the business. And we've used this time to improve the underlying fundamentals of the business so that when that next growth phase comes, we're ready to capitalize on that and ensure that we are there through survive and advance, effectively survive and advance tactics here to ensure that we're there for that next growth phase within the market. So again, during this time, it's been important for us to recognize, identify those things, and ensure that we're improving the overall cash flow of the business, the overall margins in the business. And I'm happy to say that fundamentally the business has improved and done well during this time of what the industry calls the solar coaster. And we believe to see that kind of bottoming out now. And we have seen increase in new sales, new residential sales. We've seen an increase in interest coming back out. Interest rates we've seen starting to come back down a little bit and normalize. But overall, Boston is a great place to be doing residential and small commercial solar. Great local rebates, great incentives. And so we can still save our customers money, get them into a great system that not only provides security from a financial position in terms of their energy bills, but also in terms of a power in redundancy for their energy usage, during those times of the cold winter months or warm winter summers when you need that extra power. If something happens, you still have power at your house.
That leads perfectly into your press release that you just put out today. Can you just talk to investors and listeners out there about what that means for SinglePoint?
That is specifically geared. It's a great transition, right? We've been looking for ways to grow the business. One of the hamstrings for us has been able to work with third-party sales organizations because we previously had used tools that were internally built for ourselves and our internal sales team. So now we've been able to implement strategies in which we can bring on other sales teams that can bring us new projects. And for example, with Solarize NE, they service about 500,000 customers that we weren't even in the market looking at because they just weren't in our geographical range to service. So we've opened up our ability to service additional geographies around Massachusetts, and that partnership will allow us to reach those individuals. And the beautiful part about that is we don't have to look at any additional overhead costs because Solarize NE is bringing the sales team and staff to support that additional geographical service area. So for us, we'll be able to utilize their process and their customers, and they can use our tools in terms of engineering, in terms of customer quotations and building customer proposals. And then they go ahead and sell the system. And once that system is sold, we're actually able to go ahead and install that system for them. So it's a great partnership and a great opportunity for us to expand and continue to grow that residential side of the business. And that'll also allow some of our team to focus additional time on the small commercial side of the business.
Can you talk to us about, if we stay with interest rates that are not going up and we see, some of the economy pick back up again and the markets pick back up, where is SinglePoint at cash wise? Are you going to need to look at doing a raise this fall, or do you feel if, the solar market picks back up that you guys will be in a good place? Or
yeah, I believe we're in a good place, right now in terms of how the underlying business is at Boston Solar and the subsidiaries. We would love to recapitalize some debt out there with other debt, that is more affordable for the business from a cash flow standpoint. Ultimately, our goal would be to do that through debt and not having to, go to the equity markets because the equity markets have been tight. The cost of capital in the equity markets right now is pretty, expensive. And we've seen the small caps, try to make a run and try to rally back. With this coming out there, we're starting to see those headlines in the media and everything else. So we'll see where the small cap markets and micro cap markets end up throughout the end of the year, especially with interest rates and everything that's going on. That's an external factor, and lever to us that we don't have the control over. But ideally, we have a nice balance sheet at the subsidiaries that, we get our, the financial side at SinglePoint and the filings and everything else. We'll be able to, in my opinion, really just restructure that debt so that that side of the business becomes more cash flow positive, and that's where we want to be. That's going to help the business grow at a healthy pace and not necessarily get out over our skis, because again, we have to acquire our inventory and everything else through our own cash. But at the same time, it'll allow us to be more efficient without having to go to the equity markets for that. So that's the ideal scenario, is being able to find that right balance to ensure that we have as much positive effect on cash flow and cash on hand, as well as not going to the market to put additional pressure or anything else like that on the equity. So that's where we would like to be.
And where's your market cap at right now that the reverse is done, or do you guys have an idea of that?
So we're still waiting on the DTCC roundups at this point in time, as of Tuesday, August 20th here. So we're not exactly sure where that will where that will end up falling. The math that we've put into it, what we've looked at, our assumptions is probably going to fall somewhere, north of 20 million at this point, with those roundups and the shares and equity that we distributed back out to the shareholders through that roundup. But we won't know officially until DTCC provides us those numbers.
And for the solar industry, you briefly touched upon that some of the companies have closed their doors. If everything starts picking up and we do see like a flattening of interest rates, or even maybe them going down again, I think, or do you feel like there's a big possibility and opportunity for you guys to take charge and,
Yeah, absolutely. So you bring up a great point, because with that happening, it's brought multiples down on acquisition targets. So we do feel that once this all settles in and starts to kind of turn around the other direction, there's going to be a huge opportunity for us to move quickly in some various markets. We still fully believe in our strategy that state by state and at the largest size regional is the best way to do solar, because going solar in Massachusetts is extremely different from going solar in California or Arizona or Texas, right? You can't just drop in teams and say, good luck. Here's the market, here's the dynamics. There's a big learning curve, because our utilities in Arizona are way different than the utilities in Massachusetts, and how permitting goes and how processing goes. So, we do believe that there's the opportunity to scale the business quickly as things start to turn around. That being said, we are really focused at growing and scaling Boston Solar. That company has shown the ability to continue growth in its market vertically and geographically, continue to improve the efficiencies over there. We want to show that we have a great business and show that cash flow positive, show that profitability, because not only does that help us better finance the business, but also when we go in to make these other acquisitions, we have that platform to build off of. And so we don't want to overshoot what we're capable of doing and handling at any one point in time. And so taking that time to really ensure that we perfect the business at Boston Solar, while that may slow some other things down, it will ultimately speed them up, because we have a true great process in order, if that makes sense.
Just for anyone that's new listening to the SinglePoint story, can you just give a little recap and some of the amazing milestones achieved with Boston Solar, of just kind of that company and what you guys have done?
Yeah, so we were able to acquire Boston Solar in April of 2022. They have gone from 17 million to over 26 million in revenue during that time. So we've been really able to scale that revenue. We've done some large installations, from the MGM Music Hall at Fenway Park for the Boston Red Sox to some major global manufacturers that have facilities in Massachusetts. We've done over 6,000 residential installs at Boston Solar and over 1,300 five-star Google reviews. So we've really focused on the customer experience, and that's really where we shine, is we ensure that the customer from the initial sales and discussion of design and what meets their needs, all the way through installation, and then post service, our O&M department after that, to ensure that it's a seamless experience. So, we're proud of the work. We've got a great crew over there. We've got great teams. And over the last 7 months, that we've really identified the efficiencies that I've talked about earlier, and being able to reduce that overhead, being able to, in effort to improve that gross margin and overall on track, for profitability. So we're excited with that business. The Northeast, a lot of people believe is, why are you doing solar there? It seems to make so much more sense in Texas or, California, or somewhere that seems like it always has sunshine. It really comes down to economics. The price of energy throughout the Northeast is extremely high. You have great local incentives and local rebates that help drive customers to going towards a more renewable strategy. And overall, Massachusetts is consistently ranked in the top 5 for ROI on residential and commercial solar installations. So it's an exciting market. It's a very forward-thinking market in renewables. A whole bunch of new capital just got allocated by the government there for commercial buildings. I think over $165 million, of which one of our premier partners in the commercial space was awarded a significant amount of that. So we're excited to see how that's deployed. We're working closely with them for additional commercial buildings. We actually just finished up a school with them that we'll be discussing and announcing soon. So exciting times for solar. And this is a long-term market. The incentives just got renewed for another 10 years. And energy is not going anywhere. Every day, we need our electricity. We need our energy on. Wi-Fi, cell phones, internet connectivity. Everything that we do is just leaning towards a more electrified world, all the way to our automobiles, right? So we're not going to see energy efficiencies or solar or renewables go anywhere. It's a decade-long tailwind that we have here in this market. And our entire goal right now is to ensure that we are primed and positioned for that next growth phase of this market.
You look at the numbers from China and everywhere around the world, solar is here to stay for a good while. So I think you guys are in the right spot at the right time. I wanted to briefly touch on your air purification side as school's coming back, as flu season's coming back, as there's so many things looming in the headlines. I feel like we should briefly touch upon that. And then I wanted to ask if there is, a big flu season or whatever those things come about, how quickly are you guys able to deploy that or set that up? Like how streamlined of a process is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this goes back to spending 90% of our time indoors, right? And what do you need when you spend 90% of your time indoors? You need power and you need clean air. We're sharing air anytime we're indoors, at school, at work, in a conference room. And so it's important to have that focus and have the ability to create, as clean and friendly air environment as possible. We've been working throughout California to implement our air solution into the schools throughout the government grant that we had won. So we're excited about that. We continue to see interest there. It's summertime, so we're focused on schools. So it's been a little bit, slower as those departments are out this summer. But we have seen schools starting to return. The emails and the conversations are starting to pick back up. And this stuff, like you just mentioned, when this flu season starts to come, it's all in a cycle. You start getting the media, the outlets, everybody talking about flu season, and it just reminds everybody, I better start thinking about this again. And so we're really happy with our ability to implement those solutions because it's quick. If somebody's looking for an indoor air purifier, we can order that, we can ship it, and all they have to do is plug it in. And they're creating a clean room environment for their students, teachers, faculty, whoever it might be that's out there. So it's a very simple thing to implement, and it's a very easy decision to make. So once that's there, they're able to go ahead and place those orders, through Box Pure Air. It'll be interesting to see what happens this year. I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit all over the place, just because we've got a lot of things going on in our world right now. So indoor air quality is always going to be top of mind. It really is established, but it's also a nascent market. There's regulations coming out through ASHRAE, who oversees basically building management and indoor air quality. That used to just be guidance. And one of the examples is they used to suggest that you have 2.5 air exchanges per hour. It's now going to be a requirement that you have more. I think they're increasing it by almost 90%. And so it's now going to be a requirement. And when those regulations start to come out, schools and commercial buildings are going to have to start implementing these solutions. Otherwise, they potentially face, fines and actions, for them to put them in place. So we'll start to see how that dynamic plays out over the course of the next 6 to 9 months here. But at the end of the day, indoor air quality is essential for health. Power and constant energy is essential for not only financially, but also just redundancy and safety. And so we're in two really great markets that both have decade-long tailwinds. There was $189 billion dedicated to renewable energy through the last IRA, and those credits being extended out for the next 10 years. And then there's been billions of dollars dedicated to indoor air quality, specifically at schools, and $350 billion dedicated to commercial buildings. And that is all still being allocated and rolled out. So we're excited about it. Indoor air quality, again, it is nascent. It's still on its first wave up. And for us to be positioned the way we are gives us the opportunity to go ahead and execute on that business.
I love that both of your products are so easy on the customer side for, just plug in and you have customer help all the way through with Boston Solar. Those are hard things to find most days. So I feel you're well positioned with that. Will, this has been fantastic. It sounds like you guys are working hard out there. Is there anything else that you'd like to finish off with for telling shareholders and then new possible investors?
Yeah, absolutely. One, we appreciate you having us on today and look forward to follow-ups to continued discussion about SinglePoint and what we're doing. We look forward to getting back to normal course of business. This year has definitely been tumultuous, and we're going to continue to battle to be back in that position and get our timely filings done, continue to build the business, and let our teams execute effectively. So thank you for having us. And again, we're SinglePoint. We're traded on CBOE under the ticker symbol SING.
To hear more Cleantech podcasts, visit the Cleantech and Climate Change page on Investor Ideas. You can find it on our top template. Also, Investor Ideas has a lineup of other podcasts and themes, including the AII, the Crypto Corner, our cannabis podcast called Cannabis News and Stocks on the Move, rated one of the top investor podcasts in the sector, Play by Play, a podcast looking at sports and esports news, and Exploring Mining. To listen to any of our podcasts, visit our podcast page on Investor Ideas at investorideas.com/audio. And a reminder, you can hear our podcasts on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, and most audio platforms available to you. If you like any of our podcasts, we would appreciate you recommending them or reviewing them on your audio platform. And to help you follow and track cleantech and renewable energy stocks, Investor Ideas has created a directory of publicly traded stocks in the sector. You can find that by going to our homepage, looking on the sidebar and looking at renewable energy and environmental themes, and you'll find our stock directories there. Investor Ideas does remind all of investors to read our disclaimers and disclosures on our site. You can find them at investorideas.com/about-disclaimer.asp. It is important to read these. And this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investment involves risk and a possible loss of investment. Thank you again and have a great day.